You can't post once a month and then hope that your audience knows who you are and are able to connect with you.
3 things you should be doing on social media. Joined today by Angela Shea.
Thank you for having me.
So you are, I would say, the most knowledgeable person I know in social media. You've created an incredible company that we'll talk about in a few minutes.
Thank you.
And I would just like to, I feel like I'm okay at social media. There are definitely some things that I lack that I maybe don't do best practices on. So I would just like your feedback on things that
You're great at
I should be doing
media.
and also that other people can do as well. So yeah, what is one thing that a photographer, it's an overwhelming amount of, you're looking at Instagram, how do you start to get traction? How do you become a little bit more successful than you were yesterday? And how do you start attracting some organic reach?
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, showing up is important. Showing up in like the feed, on your stories, creating that relationship with your audience. And I feel like that just goes without saying. Like, you have to be active. You can't post once, a month and then hope that your audience knows who you are and are able to connect with you. But I think we've had a lot of pushback from photographers when Reels came out because they have to create the video content now. And just kind of embracing the changes that are happening within Instagram specifically. So I feel like social media is like so many, faceted different parts. But I'm very familiar with Instagram, so that's what I'm going to speak to. And so showing up within the Reels space and finding a way for your photos to appear within that video space is like really important because Reels are getting pushed out to non-followers, and Reels are like the easiest, fastest way for you to get in front of new clients, grow your brand, get more engagement, all that. So finding a way to show up within the Reels space and creating Reels and taking people behind the scenes of your brand and wearing your heart on your sleeve and kind of showing the human behind the brand. Because I think as humans, we're very we like to make emotional purchases. We like to feel good about how we're spending our money. So when a photographer shows their human side and is able to connect with the followers that way, then people are more likely to book with him. And I have an example that I use all the time. So if somebody's heard me on different podcasts, I'm gonna share it again. But let's just picture that we're using a bride and a photographer scenario. And a bride follows 3 photographers. All of them have equally great work, right? 2 of them just have like a perfectly curated portfolio. 1 of them has a great portfolio, but they also show up on stories. They show behind the scenes. They share the client experience. They take like the viewers behind the scenes into their brand and like how much they pour into each different client. And so when the bride's about to, or the couple, or they're about to make a decision of who they want to go with, there's already that like relationship established without ever even having a real conversation with that person because they've created that over, a span of when they're showing up on Instagram. And so it's just good for business,
Yeah.
People want to support your journey. They want to see the raw, the challenges. They want to follow the founder and not the brand, if that makes sense. And
Sure.
I feel like we feel that way with like all of the brands that we follow online. We want to know the founder story, right? Mm-hmm. We want to kind of like see what they're going through and follow the human. Although like we won't purchase from the brand and we like the product potentially, right? But people connect more with the founders, and I think that goes just translates into photography and getting more bookings and connecting with your audience in that way.
Yeah, I feel like it's becoming increasingly more important the better that AI generated images get to actually at least kind of add that credibility of, no, I actually am creating the work that you're seeing on my Instagram portfolio as well.
For sure.
I feel like a lot of us, we saw the opportunity with Reels a long time ago, and then I feel like myself and a lot of other photographers really heavily resisted. That's like, I don't want to do this, but I feel like at some point you kind of have to play the game. It's a business, right?
Yeah, and I think with Reels, when it initially launched, Instagram was trying to buy out TikTok, and like there's so much happening there, and it was COVID and 2020 and all the trends were coming over from TikTok, so we saw a lot of like pointing and dancing.
Try not to Fortnite dance challenge.
That thank God isn't a thing anymore. But I think that's where it didn't feel authentic to a lot of people, and they're like, I am a luxury photographer, and how is this supposed to connect me with my future clients? Whereas like the younger photographers or the newer photographers that were starting out were very comfortable doing that, and they maybe weren't trying to attract those, $100,000 weddings. But now it's like shifted into, there's different ways to show up on Instagram, Reels specifically, that doesn't involve, actually I don't even think anybody's pointing and dancing anymore, so.
That's good.
That's good, very good. So just showing up within like what the Reels space is today, like in 2024, which I feel like for photographers specifically, it's having like a strong hook that can get people to watch their reel. Watch time is like super important, so not making it like a really long slideshow. You want to use reels as like bait to get people to go. No, I don't like the word bait. Bait sounds weird. Like a lead magnet. So like they look at your like a sampling of your work, and then they go to your profile and they're able to binge the rest of your content and then eventually make it over to your website. So with that, I feel like photographers should be creating shorter reels that has like a sampling of like either an event that they did or like their portfolio pieces, or a before and after experience that they're able to share, and then that's how they're able to like reach different audiences and grow into more followers.
And then you've created a very easy way for myself and others to make reels. Do you want to talk briefly about what you've built?
Yeah, sure. So I don't know, we didn't mention this, I don't know if this is appropriate, but I was also a photographer myself for over a decade. So I did all the things, I shot, traveled, burnt out, and walked away. I like needed a very dramatic sabbatical. And so I did that, and then during that time was when I started managing Instagram accounts for other photographers, because there's such a huge need for help in that area. So around that same time was when Instagram created Reels and was pushing that, and we were trying to figure out like what is an easy way for photographers to show up within that space. And there was nothing that was like really streamlined for photographers to use. And so what we've built came out of sheer like desperation and like needing a solution. So we create reel templates that are specifically for photographers, because there's so many different types of reels you could be making, but these are like very photo heavy reels, because we hear from a lot of photographers that they don't capture a lot of behind the scenes, they don't have time to focus on that.
One clip from that you shared in your story that day, and you got to build a reel from it.
Yep. So we kind of focus on that, making sure that they're very photo heavy, that they're able to, the photos change pretty quickly, because another thing, you don't want to make sure your photos hold too long, because attention span, right? People are just going to swipe right past it. So keeping things in mind like trending audios and making it a photo heavy reel, and then having some space for a little bit of behind the scenes where they can incorporate that. But it's a template that's designed and built right inside of Instagram, so no outside apps needed, which is another thing people complain about, like, oh my gosh, there are apps that can help you with Reels out there, but it's like you have to learn another app and you have to download it, and then when you sit down to create a Reel, you're like, what app am I using today, So this is all like right within Instagram. It's a private community that you get access to for photographers, and it's just plug and play. Everything's beat matched, it has trending audios that we release every week. So there's new content every week to use. So it makes
awesome.
Makes it easy.
my workflow process with it is that I will just pull. Usually, I guess 3 months ago, I would be building a carousel out of everything, and I would probably pull usually 20 images, and then I would spend so much time trying to get it down to 10. And now I just find a reel that has. They're all listed by video clips and photos, and you just literally just put them all in, and it takes less than a minute. So.
I love
awesome.
that. I love hearing that it takes less than a minute, because that's the goal, is just to make it super easy. Especially, we've had photographers tell us that they put a reel together before even leaving the wedding at the end of the night. Yeah. So they're able to like grab some sneak peeks, put it together, tag the client, tag the other vendors.
Referrals, like night of reel, not even like a preview, like just like.
Yeah. And then including all the vendors that are collaborators. So then like it goes out to all the different accounts. It's just like how you generate that organic, like mini viral content, right? Yeah. It's not like funny, relatable stuff maybe, but it's like how you get your next bookings, because you're able to share that content with everybody else that worked the wedding. You're able to tag the client and then their friends and family, get to see it, or people that weren't invited to the wedding, that are snooping the content. So that's, I think that's super helpful for business.
Yeah. What does a good balance? So my social presence is a bit all across the board because I'm a lot of different things. What is a good balance between kind of that behind the scenes organic content about yourself, the photographer, versus actually showing your work? Or is there a balance, or do people have to kind of figure that out on their own?
I think it depends, on your audience and how much, you're willing to share. Because there's also a lot of photographers that don't want to share a lot of personal. But we've seen that like anytime a photographer does share themselves or even them at work, it does usually do better with their viewers. Because again, they want to know the founder and they want to support the story. But it is really good to share like your portfolio pieces or like a wedding you worked on, because it shows people that you're actively booking, actively working, so you're staying fresh on people's minds. And then B, also it stays in your feed as your portfolio piece for future people to come find you, and also for the algorithm to just keep showing your reel to other people.
Awesome. What's another thing that I should probably be doing on social media, or a general photographer should be doing on social media that they're probably not right now?
This one it's tricky because it takes a little bit of work, but I think all businesses, and especially photographers, should be incorporating this right now. I feel like a lot of coaches have been using it a lot, and photographers are a little, maybe they think that it's like for a different niche to do this, but what I'm going to talk about is ManyChat. So there's obviously like different programs that can do this, but I feel like ManyChat is kind of the dominating one right now. And that's basically where you create a reel, and then you have a call to action to comment link or comment guide, and I will send you, you'll send people something which is all automated, so you can set up ManyChat. And as a photographer, this is a really great way to automate conversations and start conversations in your DMs, because let's say you have top locations for a photo shoot in your area, right? You've like created this guide, you made these resource for your future clients that they can bookmark, they can save, they can reference. And so for someone that's maybe planning a wedding, maybe it's venue recommendations, maybe it's outfits that they should be wearing, so you create these little value-packed information things that you can send to people. And then once you put that in a reel and you tell people to comment this and I will send you this, it sends them a direct message once they comment, and then right there you have a conversation already started in the DMs. So you can follow up with like so many different ways, right? You can send them a Pinterest board that sends them to your Pinterest. You can send them to your blog post where maybe that's the resource. You give them a direct link. And so there's so many ways that you can be starting conversations. And then once you have somebody in your DMs, right, that's like a warmish lead for things. And then your content starts showing up, like Instagram prioritizes your content because there's that DM relationship. So all of a sudden, like you have like these stronger links with people within your audience and your content, because a lot of people like are frustrated with their content not being shown, but it's because your relationship with that person isn't as strong, right? So you want to create as many strong relationships with your audience as possible. So that's kind of like a way that you can, get more DMs. Also engagement on your post, right? If 25 people are commenting link because you're providing something like that's very valuable.
What's going on here? It looks like a popular.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden there's more views, there's more engagement. And so with Instagram, right, it pushes out your content to a small portion of people to see how your audience relates to it. And if people are engaging, it gets pushed out to more and more and more. So that's where you see like baby announcements and engagement announcements, right? Because they post it and then everybody's engaging with it, so Instagram knows to push it out. So when you have like a value-packed reel or even a carousel post, you can do this to like a static post. It just works better on reels, I think. Instagram sees as like, okay, people are commenting, something's happening here, let's push it to more and more people. So ManyChat, I think everybody should use it, and I think photographers are not using it enough.
So when it comes to Instagram, how do you create something that is shareable and organically gets out there a little bit more?
So with creating shareable and savable content, think about your experience as a consumer on Reels, right? As the audience, as you're scrolling them, how often do you actually double tap and like a reel? Like not very, like it has to like blow your mind, right? But how often do you send it to someone or bookmark it for yourself for later, right? Could be like a restaurant you want to eat at, or a location you want to visit, or something inspiration, or something that resonates, and you send it to your wife, to your friends, to somebody that relates. And so as photographers, we have to think about creating content for the consumer. So I think a lot of times we're very excited about our own content and we create for ourselves, which is important in a way, right? But if the goal is to get more bookings and to connect with your audience and serve them and get more engagement on your post, you do have to think about serving your audience. And that just means like showing up with value packed and knowing who your audience is, right? Knowing like, are you targeting brides? Are you doing family photos? Are you doing destinations? So really honing down and understanding your client, and then thinking about how you can serve them. So if you're a destination, photographer, maybe, creating a carousel post or a reel featuring a specific venue, or sharing tips that will, help streamline the wedding day timeline. Or I feel like a lot of my examples are very wedding heavy. That's because I come from that, experience of shooting weddings. But it applies to anything. Like you have to really understand your client. If you're, shooting baby photos, understanding what those moms need in that season and what would be helpful to them. Is it a checklist? Is it tips for how to make sure your baby stays calm during the photo shoot? And so when you're able to do stuff that is create content that they can bookmark and reference later, and if you are consistently putting out like value-packed informational type of stuff, you're automatically placing yourself as an expert in like their mind, right? If they're following 3-4 photographers that all shoot similar content, but then you're always kind of serving your audience, then you automatically are like authority, right? Yeah. So it's like a lot of psychology, I think, goes into that, but it's also very time consuming to create content like that. So I feel like sometimes photographers are like, okay, I'm gonna be creating these like value-packed stuff, and then you get burnt out real fast. So it's almost like pace yourself. Do like 4 a month, right? You do like 1 every Monday that's like value-packed, and then the rest of your reels could be a little simpler. And honestly, reels don't even have to be like so complicated. You can take a 5-second video behind the scenes of you shooting, right? If your second shooter got a video of you, and then adding like a very strong hook to it and packing the caption. This is what's working right now in 2024, but packing the caption with like value. And that 5-second reel, because we talked about earlier, watch time is like super important.
Just loops.
It loops, and as long as you're not putting fluff in there, right? It's like stuff that's like really helping your audience, and you have a reel that's, a video that's playing, it will do better, and it will serve your audience, and you don't have to overcomplicate it. It doesn't have to be this like production, of a reel, but you're still able to show up within the caption and create savable, shareable content that way.
Yeah, I think that's been the key for me, is creating valuable content that's hopefully valuable long term. And that can either be a reel, or that could be a reel that becomes a blog post, or maybe it goes the other way. Maybe you've already written all this content. And you can just kind of repurpose that into something that's a little bit more consumable in the vertical video format.
Yeah, and when somebody does come to your page, right, they're tempted to binge your content. Yeah. So if like you've got stuff in there that's like, oh, this is really good, and I can relate to this, and this is useful, I mean, they'll stick around. Yeah. They'll hit the follow button. So
I'm a photographer. I'm doing lots of weddings. How do I start to get better behind the scenes footage?
I love this question. So I think it's important to either know like your system. Are you able to remember to document behind the scenes and capture that? And I've seen photographers do this really well, where they're like, all right, shooting on digital, and then like pulling out their phone and even prompting it with telling the couple, okay, we're gonna get some for Instagram, for social media. Rarely, unless they have like an NDA signed, they're like opposed to it because they like want to see sneak peeks that same night. So you're able to do both. That's great. But I think a lot of photographers go into the mindset of like, I'm serving my clients, this takes away from the experience. So, a lot of people don't align with that. And my recommendation is make sure it's your second shooter's responsibility. So your second shooter's got like a shot list, right? They're getting the groom shots, the wide shots, and then you're like, hey, you're responsible for getting all of my behind the scenes for the day, right? And then at the end of the day, you're gonna share that with the planner, with the florist, you know, you can just like airdrop all of that content to everyone. And that's how you leave a memorable experience on the people that you're working with, right? By giving them free content that they can use right away, or, you know, creating a reel same day, next day, tagging everybody, and you have all that content for them to use. So just making sure that your second shooter knows how you want that content shot, and like what you're looking for specifically. The other tip I have is you can have like a little camera attachment. If you can't do it if you're not doing the two things, have a little camera attachment. There's like variations of that, so you can attach that and film your own behind the scenes. I feel like it doesn't work as well for weddings, but if you're out on location doing a session, that works. Or even like setting up like one of those tripods that follow you, like DJI has a good one that I have. So if you're, and it makes it feel like the video is moving, it's tracking you, and it doesn't feel like you just set up a tripod and nothing's happening. So doing that, if you're like in a studio situation, I think that's
on a Roomba, just let it.
Right, go all the way around.
I might have to do that. That sounds fun.
When you're actually shooting the content, is making sure you switch it to 60 frames per second. I've heard a lot of photographers, or like a lot of recommendations floating around on Instagram about shooting in 4K. I'm not one that supports that, because first of all, when you're uploading it back to Reels and Instagram, it gets compressed again. And the 4K, I think the compression there's, I don't know, maybe other video specialists can like challenge me on this, but if you're just getting behind the scenes footage and you want it to look elevated and buttery smooth, I always recommend just like the day that you're shooting, because you don't want all of your content in your phone at 60 frames per second. But for like stuff to feel like smooth and elevated, I switch it to 60 frames per second. And then also when you are shooting the content, or if you're like instructing your second shooter to do this, really, really slowing down in the moment. So for some reason, and I used to do this all the time, is we're at a wedding, things are happening, and you're like, oh, this is beautiful reception. You just walked in, and so what happens is you pull out your phone and you quickly pan the room, right? And you're like, got it, I'm so good, I got my behind the scenes for the day. It's golden sunlight, the couple's walking, you kind of like pan it again, and then you come home at the end of the day and like none of it's usable, right? It's like dizzy, too fast, it just doesn't match the rest of your work. And so I think with photographers, I'm not sure like why mentally we do this, because we are creative and like we really understand the process. But when you're in the middle of a shoot or at a wedding day, it's just like before shooting that behind the scenes content, like really like taking a breath and like rethinking, like rewiring your brain to think like a filmmaker. Okay, like how would a filmmaker frame this shot? Like if you look at wedding videos and like what your videographer friends are delivering, you almost never see a panning shot. Like that's just not a thing, no. So taking out your phone and like, let's say you walked into the reception and just letting it like linger there for a second, right? There's movement, there's maybe a little bit of like a small pan, but you're framing it, you're lingering it. And so then when you go to create a reel, even if it's like you need a bunch of moments from that day, your shots are like usable, right? They're like framed and they match your work, and they all of a sudden feel elevated, right? You're able to like not have like the sloppy behind the scenes, although it does make for like good like transformation videos. I saw this and then there's this, but if you're trying to like put out really like high-end feeling reels, you're like, I'm a creative, I see things this way, and then like the aunt that's next to you shooting that same content, she's like, wait, we were looking at that together, how did his look so much better than mine? We were both using iPhones, So I feel like that's just another tip that I like to recommend, is just slowing down and thinking about it differently.
Yeah, bring the Roomba, the Osmo Pocket 3 on the Roomba.
There you
I hope
go.
someone does that. I'd love to see that. Should we order a Roomba? Jacob says yes. All right, well, thank you so much for joining me today. Where can people go to find out a little bit more about you?
We are at socialtemplates.co online, socialtemplates.co on Instagram, and we have reels for photographers.